On a stormy night, a plus-size maid whispers the secret that's broken her life, and the coldest man in the city makes her an offer no one else ever would: protection, a locked door, and a contract with rules she controls. Forced into his penthouse, danger hits the glass. Bullets, blackouts, and a promise. He'll be lethal to everyone, except her. A new doctor questions everything she was told. A rival wants her traded like property, and the one man the boss trusts most, his access codes say otherwise. As sparks turn to heat and old video surfaces, years ago, a maid saved a terrified boy in that same hotel. What else has been hidden? Who poisoned her hope? And why do they want her convinced she's unworthy of love? When she's taken and the timer starts, the city holds its breath. He'll kneel, bleed, and burn an empire to get her back. But if her truth was a lie, what are his other plans? Revenge, a rescue, or a future she never thought she could have? Will love built on rules become the one rule that saves them, or the spark that starts a war? Through the rain-slicked windows of the Rinaldi Tower, Bianca watched wealthy guests stumble out of the penthouse party, their laughter echoing off marble floors. Her cleaning cart squeaked as she pushed it down the hallway, careful to stay invisible. That's what good maids did, blend into the background like furniture. The clock read 11:40 p.m. Her shoulders ached from scrubbing bathrooms all evening, but she kept her movements precise and quiet. The party had left chaos in its wake. Champagne stains on thick carpets, broken crystal, and the sharp scent of expensive cologne mixed with spilled alcohol. When she reached Suite 4701, her hands trembled on the cart handle. Earlier, she'd glimpsed red spatters on cream wallpaper through the barely open door. Security men in black suits had appeared and disappeared, their faces hard as stone. Now the door was closed, wrapped in silence that made her skin prickle. "Miss Martinez!" Mr. Chen's voice cut through the quiet. The hotel manager's shoes clicked against marble as he approached, his thin lips pressed into a disapproving line. "I warned you about refusing special requests from our VIP guests." Bianca's throat tightened. Last week, a drunk executive had cornered her in a suite, pawing at her uniform. She'd pushed past him and run. "Sir, we can't afford staff who don't understand their place." His words dripped with disdain as his eyes swept over her curves. "Perhaps someone of your shape should be grateful for any attention." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. The elevator dinged, and both of them turned. Salvatore Rinaldi stepped out, his presence filling the corridor like smoke. His black suit was immaculate, but something dark stained his sleeve cuff. Power rolled off him in waves that made the air feel thick. The most dangerous man in the city moved with liquid grace, his face carved from marble and shadows. Bianca's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd seen him before, always from a distance. In security footage she watched during training, in newspapers naming him a legitimate businessman, despite whispered rumors of bodies in the river. Now his dark eyes locked onto her with laser focus. "I'm sorry," she blurted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I'm sorry I'm broken. The doctor said I can't have children. That's why I need this job so badly. I'm sorry for causing trouble." The silence stretched like a bowstring. Mr. Chen's face drained of color. Salvatore moved closer, each step deliberate. When he spoke, his voice was soft as velvet over steel. "What doctor told you this?" "Dr. Evans at the fertility clinic downtown." She couldn't look away from his gaze, deep and dangerous as a well at midnight. "Bad men," he said. "Use lies to keep women obedient, to make them believe they're worth less." His Italian accent wrapped around the words like smoke. "Your diagnosis may be false." Mr. Chen shifted nervously. "Sir, about her position—" "Leave her alone." Salvatore didn't raise his voice, but the manager flinched. "She stays! Go!" The manager scurried away like a startled rat. Bianca's hands twisted in her apron as Salvatore studied her, his head tilted slightly. Without another word, he moved past her toward the suite, phone already at his ear, speaking rapid Italian. Through the rest of her shift, she felt his presence like electricity in the air. He appeared in doorways and elevators, watching hotel operations with predatory focus while men in suits cleaned the mysterious suite. Her hands shook less as the hours passed, as if his words had steadied something inside her. The rain stopped before dawn. Bianca clocked out at 6:02 a.m., gathering her coat around her as she stepped into morning air, scrubbed clean by the storm. Early sunlight caught on the tower's glass walls, making them shine like fire. Water dripped from awnings as she walked home, her sensible shoes splashing through puddles that reflected the lightening sky. At the corner, she paused and looked back at the tower, stretching toward clouds turned pink by sunrise. The most dangerous man she'd ever met had shown her unexpected kindness. His words about lies and obedience echoed in her mind. She couldn't understand why he'd spoken so gently only to her, why his fierce attention had felt not like a threat, but like shelter. The memory of his dark eyes studying her made her shiver. In the growing light, she wondered what changes this rain-soaked night would bring. The city stirred to life around her, delivery trucks rumbling past, early commuters hurrying to trains, cafes raising their shutters. But something had shifted in her world, as if the storm had washed away an old version of herself and left something new in its place. A sleek black car glided past, its windows tinted mirror dark. She thought she glimpsed a familiar silhouette inside, but it was gone too quickly to be sure. The click of her footsteps kept steady rhythm as she walked on through streets that seemed somehow different in the dawn light, as if she was seeing them through new eyes, eyes that had witnessed both danger and unexpected grace in the space of a single night. Around her, the city shook off sleep and rain, moving into another day. But Bianca knew that something fundamental had changed when Salvatore Rinaldi stepped off that elevator and saw her. Really saw her. His words about lies and worth had cracked open a door she hadn't known was there. Now she had to decide whether to step through it, into whatever waited on the other side. The afternoon sun slanted through Bianca's threadbare curtains when her phone buzzed. 2:15 p.m. Her eyes felt gritty from too little sleep, her dreams haunted by dark eyes and blood-spattered marble. The message made her stomach clench. Your presence required. Executive floor, Rinaldi Tower, 4 p.m., employment clarification. She touched the screen with trembling fingers. After last night's chaos, termination seemed inevitable. Still, she showered and dressed carefully in her best black slacks and white blouse, smoothing her damp hair into a neat bun. The executive floor was eerily quiet when she arrived. No clicking keyboards or ringing phones, just the soft hum of climate control. Following a guard's gesture, she found herself in a sleek kitchen where Salvatore Rinaldi stood at a granite counter, arranging prosciutto on thick sourdough bread. He looked different in daylight, no less dangerous, but more human somehow. His suit jacket hung over a chair, shirt sleeves rolled to expose strong forearms. He didn't look up from his careful assembly of what appeared to be history's most precise midnight snack. Define safety for me, he said, as if continuing a conversation they'd been having all along. Bianca's prepared speech about wrongful termination died on her lips. What? Safety. He laid down another perfect slice of meat. What does it mean to you? She watched his hands move with surgical precision. A door that locks properly, she said finally. Knowing my paycheck will come on time, working somewhere that respects when I say no. He nodded once, reaching for aged provolone. Basic requirements, minimum standards. His accent wrapped around the words like silk over steel. I have a contract to offer you, private housekeeper position, my penthouse only, full medical coverage, private driver, significant salary increase. Her pulse jumped. The contract binds me as much as you, he continued. My protection, guaranteed in writing. Your boundaries, legally enforced. You set the terms of interaction. No. The word came out stronger than she expected. Thank you, but no. His dark eyes finally met hers, unreadable. He didn't argue, just nodded once and returned to his sandwich making. She escaped to the service corridors, her heart pounding. Hours passed in a fog of cleaning and avoiding eye contact. At 5:48 p.m., she was restocking linens when footsteps approached. Mr. Chen's cologne reached her before his voice did. He blocked the narrow hallway, his smile sharp as broken glass. About last night. Please move. Her voice shook but didn't break. You've caused quite enough trouble. He stepped closer. But I'm willing to be reasonable. The temperature seemed to drop as another presence filled the corridor. Salvatore materialized like a summoned demon, 2 suited men flanking him. His face was carved from ice. Mr. Chen. The words fell like stones into still water. Come with me. The manager's face went gray. Salvatore didn't touch him, didn't need to. His presence alone herded Chen toward the exit like a sheep before a wolf. At 6:10 p.m., Bianca watched through a window as a black SUV pulled away from the loading dock. She knew, with bone-deep certainty, that Mr. Chen would never return to the Rinaldi Tower. Never return anywhere. The night blurred past. She moved through her tasks mechanically, jumping at shadows. Just before midnight, she found herself in the staff locker room, staring at a temporary security pass. 1-week trial, the HR director had said carefully, by request of Mr. Rinaldi. Her hand trembled as she signed the form. 1 week only, she whispered to herself. The moment it feels like a cage, I'm gone. She tucked the pass into her pocket, its weight like a promise, or a threat. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she gathered her things, each sound echoing in the empty room. Her reflection in the locker room mirror looked the same as always, dark hair, tired eyes, practical clothes. But something had shifted, like a lock clicking open or a line being crossed. She touched the pass through her pocket. 1 week. She could survive 1 week. And if the gilded cage door started to swing shut, she would run before it could trap her. She had practice at starting over after all, had done it before, would do it again if necessary. The locker room clock ticked past midnight. Another day done, another beginning. She shouldered her bag and headed for the exit. The security pass a constant reminder against her hip. 1 week to test the boundaries of safety, to discover whether protection meant prison or shelter. The night air carried the lingering scent of rain as she stepped outside. Somewhere in the towers above, she knew Salvatore Rinaldi was watching his domain, making plans she couldn't begin to guess. But for now, she had 7 days to decide her own fate. Her footsteps echoed on the wet pavement as she walked home, counting the hours until her next shift would begin. 7 days to prove her worth, or save herself. Time would tell which. The private elevator hummed as it carried Bianca upward at precisely 7:30 a.m. Her reflection in the polished brass panels looked small, her uniform pressed and precise. She clutched her cleaning supplies like a shield. The doors opened silently onto the penthouse foyer. Marble floors stretched before her, immaculate and gleaming. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in gold. She stepped out carefully, her practical shoes silent on the expensive stone. Room by room, she explored her new domain. The living area could have housed her entire apartment 3 times over, with plush leather sofas and abstract art that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Crystal decanters caught the light on a bar cart that looked unused. The chef's kitchen took her breath away. Commercial-grade everything, from the massive refrigerator to the 6-burner range. She ran a finger along the spotless counter, already planning where she'd store her cleaning supplies. The library stopped her in her tracks. Dark wood shelves soared to the ceiling, lined with leather-bound volumes. Her fingers itched to dust them properly. A massive desk dominated one corner, everything meticulously organized except for a single drawer with a subtle but serious lock. "The contents are sensitive!" Salvatore's voice behind her made her jump. He'd appeared silently, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, exposing powerful forearms. "But you have access to everything else." He held out a thick document. "Your contract, already notarized." Bianca took it with trembling fingers, scanning the pages. The salary made her eyes widen, more than triple her current pay. Full medical and dental coverage, emergency codes and procedures. And there, in black and white. No physical intimacy without explicit verbal consent from both parties. "The kitchen needs stocking," she said finally, falling back on practicality to steady herself. "I'll make a list." "There's coffee in the pantry." His dark eyes watched her carefully. "I take it black." In the kitchen, she found comfort in the familiar routine of measuring grounds, the rich scent filling the air. She added eggs and toast to a tray, simple food for a complicated morning. The city spread out below them like a glittering map, coming alive with rush-hour traffic. The crack of gunfire shattered the peace at 10:12 a.m., glass spiderwebbed in the window beside her. Bianca dropped instinctively, heart hammering. Another shot echoed across the river. Strong hands pulled her away from the window. Salvatore's body curved over hers, shielding her as he pressed a button on his phone. "Status," he barked. "Northwest Pier. Countermeasures now." She could feel his heartbeat steady against her back while hers raced. His cologne wrapped around her, something expensive and subtle that made her head spin. Or maybe that was the adrenaline. They stayed locked together until security confirmed the threat was contained. Only then did Salvatore release her, helping her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, watching as men in suits efficiently taped over the damaged window. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "This is why I wanted you here," he said quietly. "Where I can protect you." The morning's crisis passed by 11:01 a.m., leaving Bianca rattled but determined to stay busy. She threw herself into laundry, finding peace in the methodical sorting of linens, the warm scent of fabric softener, the repetitive folding of sheets into precise hospital corners. The afternoon slipped away in a haze of domestic tasks. She organized closets, dusted shelves, and tried not to jump at every loud noise. Salvatore moved through the penthouse like a shadow, speaking quietly into his phone in Italian, always keeping her in sight. By evening, exhaustion had settled into her bones. The guest room he'd given her was bigger than her entire apartment, with a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. But sleep wouldn't come. She lay awake at 9:40 p.m., listening to the steady beep of the security camera in the hallway. The sound should have been intrusive, but instead it marked time like a metronome, reminding her that she was watched, protected, contained. The realization settled over her like a weighted blanket. She was already entangled in Salvatore's world. The morning's violence had made it clear. There would be no simple escape, no clean break. She was part of something larger now, something dangerous and compelling. The camera beeped again, regular as a heartbeat. Outside, the city lights twinkled like fallen stars. Somewhere in this massive penthouse, Salvatore was probably still working, still watching over his domain, still watching over her. She turned onto her side, trying to find a comfortable position in the too-soft bed. The sheets smelled like lavender and something else, something masculine and subtle that reminded her of Salvatore's cologne when he'd sheltered her from the gunfire. Her cheeks heated at the memory of his solid warmth against her back, the absolute certainty in his movements as he protected her. The camera beeped again, regular, relentless, like the tide pulling her further from shore. She'd signed the contract, accepted his protection, stepped willingly into this gilded fortress. Now she was here, surrounded by luxury and danger in equal measure, watched over by a man who dealt in death but treated her with careful respect. Sleep continued to elude her as the city hummed below. The guest room was climate-controlled to perfection, the blackout curtains blocking all but the faintest glow of the city. Everything was designed for comfort, for security, for keeping her safe, for keeping her here. The camera marked another minute with its steady beep. Bianca pulled the silk duvet closer, remembering the weight of Salvatore's body shielding her from harm. She was already living in his world, whether she'd meant to or not. And leaving would not be simple at all. Sunlight streamed through the repaired window at 8:00 a.m., catching dust motes and golden beams as Bianca moved through the kitchen. The routine of morning already felt familiar. Coffee first, then eggs and toast, arranged on the pewter tray with military precision. Salvatore sat at the breakfast bar, papers spread before him, his dark suit immaculate even at this early hour. He read in silence, but she felt his attention shift whenever she moved near him, like a compass finding true north. "I've made an appointment," he said finally, not looking up from his reports. "To correct a lie someone told you?" Her hand stilled on the coffee pot. "The diagnosis?" "Yes, 10:30 this morning, if you're willing." The clinic was discreet, tucked away in an elegant brownstone. The waiting room held only them, and the receptionist didn't blink at the armed men stationed outside. By 10:30, Bianca sat perched on an exam table, trying not to fidget with her paper gown. The new doctor was different, a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands who frowned at Bianca's previous medical records. "These tests are outdated, and the conclusions seem hasty. We'll do fresh blood work today and schedule an ultrasound for tomorrow morning, a complete workup." Hope fluttered in Bianca's chest, fragile as tissue paper. She crushed it down, afraid to let it take root. The drive back was quiet, the city sliding past the tinted windows. At noon, stuck in traffic, Bianca finally spoke. "I'm scared to hope," she whispered. "What if?" "Hope is not weakness," Salvatore interrupted, his voice low and certain. "It's a weapon when you use it to break free from control. Someone tried to cage you with that diagnosis, to make you feel less. Hope is how you fight back." She studied his profile, sharp against the gray sky. "Is that what you did? Used hope as a weapon?" His mouth curved slightly. "I used everything as a weapon, until it worked." The afternoon settled into domestic rhythm. Bianca labeled pantry items with careful precision, creating order from chaos. She changed sheets in the guest rooms, noting which ones needed mending. In the laundry room, she set up a small sewing basket, needles, thread, scissors, and buttons in a vintage tin she'd brought from home. The routine soothed her, each task a meditation. Salvatore moved through the penthouse on phone calls, speaking rapid Italian, but always circling back to wherever she worked. His presence should have been unnerving. Instead, it felt like shelter. At 6, he found her in the library, organizing a shelf of leather-bound classics. "Do you play chess?" he asked. It helps some people calm their thoughts. The chess set was elaborate, carved ivory and ebony pieces on a marble board. They sat across from each other in leather chairs, the city lights beginning to twinkle beyond the windows. Bianca moved her pieces carefully, remembering strategies from games with her mother years ago. They played in comfortable silence, broken only by the soft click of pieces on marble. Salvatore was a methodical player, aggressive but not reckless. But he hadn't counted on her queen. 3 careful moves, and his king was trapped. The smile that crossed his face was small but genuine, like he'd discovered something precious, a secret shared between them in the quiet evening light. The hours slipped away. Bianca finished her evening tasks, dishes washed, counters wiped, tomorrow's shopping list prepared. At 11:55 p.m., she paused in the kitchen, studying the gleaming surfaces. The fear that had driven her here was changing, becoming something else entirely. She found a sticky note in a drawer, wrote quickly, "Thank you for taking me to the doctor." Simple words for a complicated gratitude. The yellow paper stood out against the stainless steel refrigerator, a small chosen intimacy in this dangerous world she now inhabited. The kitchen light clicked off, leaving only the city glow through the windows. In the darkness, she could admit that the terror of yesterday was being replaced by something warmer, something that felt dangerously like trust. The hallway camera beeped its steady rhythm as she walked to her room. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more possibilities, more moments of quiet strength shared over chess and coffee. But tonight she had chosen to leave that note. A tiny act of vulnerability that felt braver than surviving gunfire. The guest room welcomed her with soft lamplight and lavender-scented sheets. She changed into silk pajamas that had appeared in her dresser, trying not to think about who had chosen them. The bed was still too soft, but she was getting used to it, just as she was getting used to everything else in this new life. Through the wall, she could hear Salvatore's quiet footsteps in his office. The sound was oddly comforting now, like the camera's beeps or the hum of the city below. Pieces of a lullaby she hadn't known she needed. She turned off the lamp, letting darkness wrap around her. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, medical tests, hope like a blade in her chest, the constant dance of power and protection that defined life in Salvatore's world. But tonight, she had left a sticky note on his fridge, a small yellow flag of surrender to whatever this was becoming. In the darkness, she remembered his words about hope being a weapon. Perhaps trust could be one too, wielded carefully, chosen deliberately. She closed her eyes, letting the familiar sounds of her new home carry her toward sleep. The clinic's white walls held a different weight this morning. At 7:10 a.m., Bianca sat in the sterile exam room, fingers laced tightly together as the phlebotomist filled vial after vial with her blood. Salvatore stood by the window, his presence both reassuring and intense. "Just one more," the nurse said gently, switching out tubes. Bianca watched the dark red liquid flow, remembering all the times she'd sat in other clinics, receiving news that carved away at her hope. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, marking seconds until the physician returned. When he did, his face was carefully neutral. He held a tablet, scrolling through records that had taken considerable effort and likely considerable money to obtain. "Ms. Romano, I've reviewed your previous medical history." He paused, choosing words with precision. "There's something concerning in your records from 3 years ago." Salvatore moved closer to her chair, a subtle shift that placed him within reach. "After you reported workplace harassment at your previous employer, you were prescribed medication through a women's health clinic." The doctor's voice remained steady. "The dosage and type of prescription was contraindicated. This combination is known to disrupt hormonal balance and could potentially impact fertility." The words hit like ice water. Bianca's hands unclenched, then gripped tighter. "What are you saying?" The prescription itself was irregular. These medications aren't typically combined, and certainly not at these levels. He set the tablet down. It would have created symptoms similar to certain fertility issues. A phone buzzed. Enzo Carbone, Salvatore's consigliere, had been waiting in the adjoining office. He entered with a laptop, his usually genial face set in grim lines. "The clinic traces back through 3 shells to Ignazio Moretti's medical network." Salvatore went absolutely still. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Bianca felt the world tilt sideways. "Moretti, he's your rival, the one from the pier." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "But why would he—" "Because breaking women makes them easier to control," Salvatore said, each word precise as a blade. "A woman who believes she's damaged is less likely to fight back, to demand better, to leave." The realization crashed through her in waves. Every tear she'd shed, believing she was broken. Every relationship she'd avoided, telling herself she couldn't offer a complete future. Every time she'd apologized for existing, just as she had that night in the bloody hotel suite. 3 years, she whispered. 3 years of believing I was... Her throat closed around the words. The physician quietly outlined a treatment plan. Supplements, monitoring, time for her system to reset. Enzo's fingers flew over his keyboard, documenting connections, building a case. Salvatore remained a dark pillar of contained fury beside her. They left the clinic at 11:45 a.m., the city too bright, too normal for how altered everything felt. In the car, Bianca stared at her hands, seeing them as if they belonged to someone else, someone who had been deliberately wounded, not by chance or nature, but by calculated cruelty. I made myself smaller, she said finally. I thought if I was quiet enough, careful enough, sorry enough. They wanted you to disappear, Salvatore replied, his voice gentle despite the rage she could feel emanating from him. But you didn't. You kept working, kept moving forward. They failed. The ride back to the penthouse passed in charged silence. Bianca's mind spun with implications, with memories rewritten in this new, harsh light. By 1:30 p.m., they stood in his kitchen, the familiar space now feeling like the eye of a storm. She turned to him, really looking at the man who had systematically dismantled the cage she hadn't known she was in. His face was composed, but his eyes burned with a protective fury that made her breath catch. The kiss wasn't planned. She simply moved, pressed her lips to his, soft and uncertain. His response was immediate but controlled, one hand cupping her face, the other steady at her waist. For 3 heartbeats, they shared breath and warmth and possibility. Then she gasped, a small intake of air, and he immediately stepped back. The loss of contact felt physical. I can wait, he said, voice rough. Whatever pace you need, even if waiting is the last thing I want to do. Thunder rolled across the river at 2:05 a.m., nature's artillery echoing the war drums in Bianca's blood. She lay awake in her bed, listening to the storm, knowing Salvatore was awake in his room too. The distance between their doors felt both too far and not far enough. Lightning illuminated the city in stark flashes. Each burst revealed a world transformed, not by the storm, but by truth. She wasn't broken. She had never been broken. She'd been deliberately hobbled, her spirit targeted as carefully as the gunshot that had spiderwebbed the penthouse glass. The thunder growled again, closer now. In the dark, Bianca touched her lips, remembering the kiss, the way Salvatore had yielded control the moment she showed uncertainty. Such a small thing, that respect for her boundaries. Such an enormous thing, that promise of patience. The rain beat against the windows, fierce and cleansing. Bianca listened to its rhythm, to the steady beep of the hallway camera, to the distant sounds of Salvatore's movement in his room. They were both awake, both listening to the same storm, now bound together by rage at what had been done to her. But rage wasn't the only thing binding them anymore. There was trust now, born in chess games and morning coffee. There was protection, proven in gunfire and medical records. And there was something else, something that had made her brave enough to kiss him, something that made him strong enough to step back. The storm raged on, and Bianca stayed awake, letting anger and hope war in her heart like thunder and lightning across the sky. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the penthouse into darkness at 6:40 p.m. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city grid winked out section by section like dominoes of shadow falling across the skyline. "Stay where you are," Salvatore called from his office. His footsteps moved with practiced certainty through the dark apartment. Bianca had already found the emergency flashlight in the kitchen drawer. Its beam caught Salvatore retrieving candles from a cabinet, not decorative ones, but practical emergency supplies. "The generator will keep security systems running," he explained, lighting thick pillar candles. "But the elevators are operating on minimal power. You'll stay here tonight." The fireplace cast a steady glow across the living room. Salvatore arranged candles strategically, creating pools of warm light that made the vast space feel intimate rather than exposed. Bianca watched him move with the same precise efficiency he brought to everything, wondering how many blackouts he'd weathered in this tower. "I can cook something," she offered, but he shook his head. "Let me." He rolled up his sleeves, revealing corded forearms. "The gas range still works." In the kitchen, he moved with unexpected domesticity, filling a pot with water and retrieving dried pasta from the pantry. The simple actions seemed incongruous with his dangerous reputation, yet perfectly aligned with the man she was coming to know. "What's your comfort food?" she asked, perching on a bar stool. The meal that makes everything feel safer? He considered while adding salt to the boiling water. My mother's pasta al pomodoro, simple, perfect. A pause. Yours? Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Bianca smiled at the memory. Mom would make it on rainy days when she was off work. We'd wrap in blankets and watch old movies. The conversation flowed easily in the candlelight. Childhood memories, small pleasures, the satisfaction of well-done ordinary things. Bianca described the meditative peace of mending clothes, how she loved returning order to loose threads and missing buttons. There's something satisfying about fixing what's broken, she said, then flushed at the unintended parallel to her own situation. Salvatore's eyes held hers across the flame. Yes, he said simply. There is. The pasta was perfect, the sauce bright with fresh basil. They ate at the kitchen island, their shadows dancing on the walls, when a metallic scrape echoed from the private elevator. Salvatore moved like liquid darkness. Stay here, he ordered, voice stripped to steel. Behind the counter, now! Bianca ducked down, heart thundering. The sounds that followed were precise, brutal, and mercifully brief. Impact of bodies, grunt of pain, the distinctive click of a safety being engaged. When Salvatore returned minutes later, only his bloody cuff and scraped knuckles betrayed violence. Building's secure, he said, that dangerous edge still in his voice. They won't try again. Bianca stood on shaky legs, already reaching for the first aid kit she'd noticed under the sink. Let me clean your hands. He submitted to her care, watching intently as she dabbed antiseptic over his knuckles. Their breath mingled in the candlelight. The adrenaline crash made everything feel heightened. The warmth of his skin, the steady thrum of his pulse under her fingers, the way his free hand hovered near but didn't touch her waist. I need to say something, she whispered, voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm attracted. To you. I think that's obvious now. But I'm not ready for more than this. Than touching like this, talking like this. I need time. You have it. His reply was immediate, absolute. I told you before, I can wait. Your boundaries are clear. I'll keep them. The tension transformed but didn't disappear. Instead, it became something charged but controlled, like lightning in a bottle. They returned to the living room where the fire had burned low, adding another log together. Their movements developed a careful choreography of almost contact, hyper-aware of each other's space. Salvatore read reports by candlelight while Bianca sorted linens she'd brought up from the laundry. The simple domestic task anchored her, and gradually the adrenaline faded to a comfortable awareness. When she yawned, he wordlessly offered her one end of the couch, taking the other himself. The city slowly relit itself, section by section. Neither of them moved to separate. The fire crackled, throwing soft shadows across their quiet companionship. Bianca felt her eyes growing heavy, lulled by warmth and the steady sound of papers turning. At 12:14 a.m., the last candle guttered low. Bianca had drifted off, her feet tucked under a throw blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself. Through half-closed eyes, she watched the fire's dying light play across Salvatore's profile as he read, his presence both dangerous and comforting, like a sword transformed into a shield. The power hummed fully back to life, but neither of them moved to break this moment of shared peace. Outside, the city returned to its normal rhythms. Inside, in this space carved out by candlelight and clear boundaries, they had found something rare. Trust strong enough to let them rest, even with desire burning slow and patient between them. The security room's monitors cast a blue glow across Salvatore's face at 8:05 a.m. as he reviewed the footage. His expression hardened with each replay of the elevator breach. Bianca stood slightly behind him, watching numbers scroll across adjacent screens. The access code was valid, the head of security explained, pointing to a timestamp. Internal origin traced to server block C. Salvatore's jaw tightened. Enzo's jurisdiction. Sir, given Mr. Carbone's years of service, evidence, Salvatore cut in. Not assumptions. Bianca twisted her hands together, remembering countless times her own observations had been dismissed. May I suggest something? When Salvatore nodded, she continued. Money leaves trails, even hidden ones. What if instead of focusing on who we trust, we look at vendor payments, supply contracts, anything unusual in the timing or amounts? His dark eyes studied her face. You have experience with this? At my old hotel job, I noticed the manager padding cleaning supply invoices. No one believed me until the auditors found his kickback scheme. She straightened her spine. I'm good with patterns. Let me help. After a long moment, Salvatore nodded. Full access to the books. Flag anything that doesn't fit. By mid-morning, Bianca had commandeered a corner of the library, spreading printouts across a mahogany desk. She created a timeline of suspicious transactions, noting which department heads had signing authority for each. The phone interrupted her concentration at 11:45 a.m. The clinic's number flashed on the screen. "Ms. Romano?" The physician's voice was warm. "I've reviewed your latest labs. We can begin treatment for the hormone imbalance immediately. I'd like to see you weekly to monitor progress." Bianca's hand trembled slightly as she wrote down appointment times. "And the fertility question? The damage isn't permanent. With proper treatment and a stable environment, your body should return to normal function within months." Tears pricked her eyes. "Thank you." Salvatore appeared in the doorway as she ended the call. Without a word, he crossed to the desk and placed his hand near hers, not touching, but close enough to share warmth. "Weekly appointments," she explained softly, "to fix what they did to me. I'll have Marco clear his schedule to drive you." His voice held careful control. "Those hours are blocked for both of us now." She blinked. "Both? You shouldn't face this alone." The afternoon passed in comfortable focus as Bianca built her financial map. At 6 p.m., Salvatore called her to his office. A small velvet box sat on his desk. "This isn't romance," he said without preamble, opening the box to reveal a platinum band set with a single diamond. "It's protection. As my wife, you'd have legal standing. Anyone who touched you would face consequences." Bianca stared at the ring. "A beautiful cage is still a cage." "Not if you set the terms." She looked up sharply. His face was serious, patient. "Write what you need," he continued. "Autonomy, professional support, limits on violence that affects our household. I'll sign it." Bianca picked up the ring, testing its weight. Not a chain, she decided. Armor. She could wear it like armor and write her own rules. For the next several hours, she drafted her terms in careful handwriting. Freedom to maintain her own bank account, weekly therapy sessions, veto power over violent solutions that would impact their home life, the right to say no to any physical intimacy, a clause requiring joint decisions on major household changes. At 11:30 p.m., she placed the ring on a small dish by her bathroom sink. The diamond caught light like a captured star. "I'll wear it at dawn," she whispered to her reflection. "If you sign." Down the hall, she heard the scratch of his pen against paper. She changed into sleep clothes, mind racing with the day's developments. The security breach pointed to an inside threat. The medical treatment offered hope she'd thought lost forever. And now this, a marriage of protection and carefully negotiated power. Through her open door, she could hear Salvatore moving in his office, papers rustling. She touched the contract she'd written, fingers tracing her clear demands. This was different from the false choices she'd been given before. This time, she was choosing her constraints and defining her freedoms. The ring gleamed on its dish, neither promise nor prison. By morning, it would be either a symbol of their negotiated peace or a reminder of terms she couldn't accept. But tonight, in these quiet hours before dawn, it was simply possibility, as uncertain and potent as the trust growing between them. Bianca sat at her small writing desk, reviewing the financial records one last time before sleep. Numbers didn't lie, she reminded herself. Whatever betrayal lurked in the organization would leave its mark in ledgers and timestamps. She would find it, protect this strange new household she was building, and do it on her own terms. The night settled around her like a familiar blanket. Down the hall, Salvatore's pen continued its steady scratch against paper, working through her conditions line by line. In the morning, they would know if this careful balance of protection and independence could hold. For now, in these suspended hours between proposal and decision, Bianca allowed herself to feel the full weight of the choice before her. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was respect. It was the power to say no and the freedom to say yes. It was a dangerous man willing to bind himself to her boundaries. And perhaps most importantly, it was her choice to make, with terms she had written herself. The clock ticked toward midnight. The ring waited by her sink, and in the quiet spaces between necessity and desire, Bianca and Salvatore worked separately but in parallel, building the framework of a partnership that might just be strong enough to weather whatever storm was coming. The chapel's stained glass cast jeweled shadows across the marble floor at 6:20 a.m. Bianca stood before the altar in a cream silk dress she'd found hanging on her door at dawn. The fabric whispered against her skin as she turned to face Salvatore. His dark suit absorbed the colored light, but his eyes held steady on hers. Two witnesses, his most trusted guards, stood silently in the first pew. The priest began the ceremony, but when it came time for vows, Salvatore raised his hand. "We have our own words," he said. Bianca's throat tightened as he began reciting the terms she'd written, transforming her boundaries into sacred promises. "I vow to honor your autonomy, to protect without possessing, to respect every no as final, to include you in decisions that affect our household." Her voice trembled only slightly as she responded with her own promises. "I vow to stand beside you with honesty, to maintain my independence while sharing your protection, to face challenges as your equal partner, not your possession." The ring slid cool and heavy onto her finger. The priest pronounced them married at 6:45 a.m., just as dawn broke through the eastern windows. By noon, the world exploded. Bianca was organizing linens when the first blast rocked the tower. She rushed to the windows, in time to see flames engulfing 3 black sedans in the convoy meant for Salvatore. The inferno reflected in the building's mirrored facade, making the whole street look like it was burning. Salvatore's phone rang. His expression hardened as he listened, then put it on speaker. "A wedding gift?" Ignazio Moretti's voice oozed through the line. "Though I'm hurt, I wasn't invited to celebrate." "State your purpose," Salvatore's tone could have frozen flame. "Simple trade, the bride for a ceasefire. You have 1 hour to decide how many more need to die for your attachment." Enzo stepped forward, his familiar face arranged in concerned lines. "Sir, the casualties could be significant. Perhaps a temporary arrangement." "No." Salvatore's voice cut like a blade. He strode to the window, Bianca beside him. Below, emergency vehicles screamed toward the wreckage. "Listen carefully, Moretti," he said into the phone. "Bianca Rinaldi is my wife. She is untouchable. Touch her, and I will burn your empire to ash and salt the earth where it stood." He ended the call and turned to his men. "Spread the word. Anyone who moves against her dies. Anyone who helps Moretti dies. Anyone who suggests trading her dies." His gaze landed on Enzo. "Anyone." The afternoon blurred into strategy meetings. Bianca sat beside Salvatore in a wood-paneled conference room as capos and lieutenants filed in. Her presence was both declaration and defiance. She would not be hidden away, would not become a bargaining chip. She watched them recalibrate around her, these dangerous men who dealt in blood and power. They adjusted security protocols, redirected resources, fortified defenses. Her safety became a cornerstone of their planning, not because she was weak, but because Salvatore had made protecting her synonymous with protecting himself. "The clinic network," she said during a pause, her voice steady. "Check which doctors have connections to Moretti's shell companies. He used medicine against me before." Salvatore's hand found hers under the table, a brief squeeze of approval. Several men noted her suggestion with newfound respect. As evening fell, the city quieted under martial law. Salvatore's influence had emptied the streets, established checkpoints, secured borders. War was coming, but it would come on his terms. In their bedroom, no longer separate rooms, now that marriage made shared space necessary. Bianca stood at the window. Below, armed men patrolled in precise patterns. Salvatore moved behind her, close but not touching. "You can still leave," he said softly. "I'll ensure your safety elsewhere." She turned to face him. "Do you want me to leave?" "What I want stopped mattering the moment your safety became the price." Bianca looked down at her ring, sliding it off slowly. The platinum caught lamplight, throwing shadows on the wall. For a long moment, she held it, feeling its weight, the weight of choice, of consequence, of war sparked by her presence in this man's life. Then she slipped it back on. "I chose this," she said. "I chose you. Not because you're safe, but because you make me feel strong enough to face the danger." His breath caught, a rare break in his control. She continued, voice firm. "I won't be traded, I won't be hidden, and I won't leave you to face this alone." The city's enforced quiet pressed against the windows. Somewhere, Moretti was planning his next move. Somewhere, Enzo was perhaps planning his. But here, in this room, Bianca stood her ground, the ring a familiar weight on her finger. She had chosen this man who treated her boundaries as sacred vows. This life that would never be safe, but would always be honest. This war that came because she dared to claim both love and autonomy. The ring stayed on her finger as midnight approached. It was no longer just protection or symbol. It was her declaration that she would not be moved by threats or violence. She was Bianca Rinaldi now, and she would see this choice through to whatever end awaited them. Salvatore stepped closer, hand hovering near her cheek without touching, always giving her the space to choose the contact. She leaned into his palm, accepting the comfort while maintaining her strength. The city held its breath under curfew. Tomorrow would bring violence and hard choices. But tonight, in the dark quiet of their room, Bianca and Salvatore stood together, equally committed to protecting what they'd built. A marriage founded not on possession, but on respect. Not on submission, but on choice. The morning light filtered through reinforced windows as Bianca sat at a desk in the penthouse's security room. Boxes of archived footage surrounded her, part of a legal review Salvatore had requested. Her fingers moved methodically through labeled drives, creating order from chaos. At precisely 9 work a.m., she inserted another drive. The grainy footage flickered to life, timestamp marking it from 15 years ago. The Rinaldi Tower's service corridor looked different then. Dated wallpaper, older light fixtures. Movement caught her eye. A teenage boy stumbled into frame, pressing against the wall. Even through the poor video quality, Bianca could see the bruises on his face, the terror in his stance. He was lean, desperate, checking over his shoulder with the hyper-vigilance of prey. Then another figure appeared, a maid in a hotel uniform. Bianca's breath caught. She knew that gentle posture, that efficient movement. The maid approached carefully, keys jingling softly. Her face turned toward the camera for just a moment. "Mama," Bianca whispered. Her mother unlocked a service door, gesturing quickly. "Run!" Her lips clearly formed the word, though the old footage carried no audio. The boy hesitated, then darted through. Her mother closed the door, resumed her rounds as if nothing had happened. But that boy, those sharp features, that coiled intensity, even in fear. Bianca had seen those same characteristics refined into the man she'd married. Her hands trembled as she rewound the footage, watching it again and again. Her mother, saving a young Salvatore Rinaldi. The truth of their connection unfurling like a dark flower. The morning crawled by as she pieced together more fragments. Her mother's employment records, Salvatore's gradual acquisition of the hotel, her own hiring, promotions, the subtle protections she'd never questioned. At 1:15 p.m., she found him in his office. He looked up from his laptop, reading her expression instantly. "You knew," she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. "You knew who I was when you hired me." Salvatore closed his laptop with deliberate care. "Yes." "How long?" "I discovered the connection when you applied 3 years ago. Your mother's name in your background check." He met her gaze directly. "I ensured you were hired, watched your progress, made certain you were protected. Because you owed her a debt." "Initially." He stood, moving to the window. "Your mother saved my life that night. I was running from my uncle's men. She could have ignored me, reported me. Instead, she risked herself to help." His jaw tightened. "When I learned of her passing, I couldn't repay her directly, but I could watch over her daughter." Bianca's fingers twisted together. "And our marriage? Was that gratitude too?" "No." He turned sharply. "The debt was paid the moment you were hired. Everything after, your promotions, the increased security, that was because I saw you, your strength, your kindness, your fierce heart." His voice roughened. "I wanted you for yourself, Bianca. Only you." But old fears had awakened, writhing beneath her skin. Had he manufactured their entire relationship from obsession masked as obligation? Had she been maneuvered into position like a chess piece, thinking herself the queen when she was really just a pawn? "I need space," she said finally. "To think." Pain flashed across his face, quickly controlled. "Whatever you need." The day stretched endless as Bianca moved through familiar tasks with unfamiliar heaviness. She organized files, prepared meals, folded laundry. Domestic rhythms that usually soothed her now felt like echoes of manipulation. Salvatore kept his distance, respecting her request with the same absolute commitment he gave all her boundaries. She caught glimpses of him working, speaking with security, watching her with longing. He tried to hide. Evening fell. Bianca retreated to the guest room where she'd slept during her first weeks here. The ring felt heavy on her finger. She slipped it off, placing it on the nightstand where it caught the lamp's glow. She curled under the covers, mind spinning with questions. Had her mother known who she'd saved that night? Had she somehow shaped this future where her daughter would marry the boy she'd protected? Down the hall, in the library, Salvatore stood alone. The locked drawer, the one that had caught her attention on her first tour, stood open. Inside lay a single handkerchief, yellowed with age, her mother's initials carefully embroidered in one corner. He stared at it, this tangible link between past and present, debt and desire, the boy he'd been and the man he'd become. Outside, the city hummed with night traffic and distant sirens. Inside, silence stretched between separate rooms where two people lay awake, grappling with the weight of history and the uncertainty of tomorrow. The handkerchief remained in the drawer, a testament to a moment of mercy that had spiraled out across years to shape both their lives. Whether that shape was destiny or manipulation, love or obligation remained to be seen. For now, the night held its secrets, and dawn felt very far away. Bianca watched shadows play across the guest room ceiling, remembering her mother's steady hands, her quiet strength. The same strength she'd tried to instill in her daughter. The ring gleamed on the nightstand, asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. In the library, Salvatore's fingers traced the embroidered initials one last time before closing the drawer. The lock clicked with quiet finality. At 10 p.m., the penthouse settled into uneasy silence, each of its occupants alone with their thoughts, their choices, and the complicated tangle of past and present that had brought them here. At 7:45 a.m., Bianca's hands shook as she packed the backpack. Essentials only, a change of clothes, her wallet, phone charger. The penthouse felt too quiet, charged with yesterday's revelations. She pulled out a notepad, pen hovering before she wrote, "I need a day to decide if this is love or a ledger." Her mother had taught her to face hard truths head-on. This truth felt like ground glass under her ribs. Salvatore's voice drifted from his office, deep in a business call. She moved silently past the kitchen, muscle memory from years of hotel work, making her steps silent on the marble floors. The service elevator waited, discreet as always. The descent felt endless. Each floor ticked by with mechanical precision while her heart hammered against her sternum. 28 floors to sort through her thoughts. 28 floors to question every interaction, every gentle word, every careful boundary he'd respected. At 8:10 a.m., the morning air hit her face as she walked toward the river. The water looked slate gray, choppy with wind. She made it 3 blocks before a van pulled up. The needle slid into her neck with practiced efficiency. As consciousness faded, she saw men in medical scrubs, felt herself being lifted. Her last thought was of Salvatore's face when she'd asked for space, the flash of raw hurt before his control reasserted. The video feed went live at 8:45 a.m. Salvatore watched Bianca's unconscious form on a metal table, medical monitors, beeping steady rhythms. A digital countdown clock occupied 1. Corner, 2 sacabortas. Ignazio's voice crackled through speakers. "Let's play a game of dismantling your empire or your wife, piece by piece." Salvatore's response was immediate and absolute. Phone calls dispatched orders across the city. Clubs locked their doors. Shipments froze in warehouses. Allies gathered in secure locations, bringing intel and firepower. But something felt wrong. The timing was too perfect, the execution too smooth. He reviewed security footage, tracking movements and timestamps. That's when he saw it, or rather didn't see it. Enzo had vanished precisely when the feed went live. Decades of friendship crystallized into betrayal. Every shared secret, every trusted confidence became a weapon aimed at his heart, at Bianca. In the control room at 10:02 a.m., Salvatore leaned toward the camera. Bianca was awake now, strapped down but alert. Her eyes found the camera as if she could see him through it. "Breathe with me," he said, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. "Slow count of 4, in through your nose." She obeyed, matching his rhythm. Even now, furious and frightened, she trusted him to keep her alive. The thought was a blade between his ribs. "Good, hold for 4. He counted, watching her chest rise and fall. "Out through your mouth, 4 counts." They breathed together while analysts worked, while teams deployed, while the city locked down under his command. Her eyes never left the camera. A foghorn echoed through the feed at 10:17 a.m. Salvatore's head snapped up. Again at 10:24 a.m., different direction, different tone. He knew these waters, knew their rhythms. Maps appeared on screens. Sound analysis triangulated positions. The foghorn echoed again at 10:28 a.m. The timer ticked down past 1 hour. Salvatore stood before the bank of monitors, finding the exact warehouse on the docks where 3 separate horn patterns overlapped. Where his wife breathed in counts of 4, trusting him to come. Behind him, teams assembled, weapons checked, plans confirmed. But his focus remained on Bianca's face, on her steady breathing, on the way she kept her fear controlled, just as he'd taught her. The countdown hit. 0 aguantes 59, 59. Time crystallized into a sharp point of now. Bianca breathing, teams moving, the city holding its breath. Salvatore watched the numbers fall, each second burning away like fuse wire, while his wife's eyes held the camera and the foghorns sang their betraying song across the water. The waterfront blurred with activity as Salvatore's convoy tore through the warehouse district at 11:20 a.m. The first safehouse fell in minutes, doors splintering, guards dropping. His men moved like shadows, but Salvatore was pure lightning, a force of nature cutting through resistance. Blood spattered across concrete floors. No questions asked, no mercy given. Each empty room ratcheted his tension higher until intel from the second location crackled through comms. The second safehouse proved harder, better, armed, better prepared. Bullets pinged off steel beams while Salvatore advanced through smoke and gunfire. His suit jacket was in tatters, knuckles raw, but his eyes remained laser-focused. Every second brought him closer to Bianca. Inside the dim warehouse at 12:05 p.m., Bianca's head throbbed as consciousness returned fully. Zip ties bit into her wrists, securing her to a metal chair. Through blurry vision, she assessed her surroundings: wooden pallets stacked in towers, wires snaking between them to what looked like explosive charges. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay still, remembering Salvatore's lessons. Sometimes survival means waiting, he'd told her once. Watch, learn, choose your moment. She tested the chair's stability while keeping her movements minimal. One of the pallets had a loose nail just within reach of her fingertips. The guards were distracted, arguing about missed check-ins. Slowly, carefully, she worked the nail free. Working the zip tie against the nail's edge, she felt plastic starting to give. Her shoe pressed against something familiar, the match she'd hidden in a torn insole months ago, a habit from her hotel days when power outages were common. Near her feet lay a road flare, dropped carelessly by a guard checking equipment. Gunfire erupted outside. The guards tensed, moving toward the noise. Bianca struck. One hand free, she snatched the flare, struck the match, and lit it in one fluid motion. Red smoke billowed as she hurled it toward a far corner, creating the beacon she knew Salvatore would recognize. The side door exploded inward at 12:15 p.m. Salvatore filled the frame, weapon raised. A shot cracked out. He stumbled but didn't fall, blood darkening his shirt. Still, he advanced like an unstoppable force. Enough! Ignazio's voice cut through the chaos. Cold metal pressed against Bianca's temple. Kneel or I paint the floor with her brains. Salvatore's gun clattered to the ground. He dropped to his knees, the first and only time Bianca would ever see him bow to anyone. His eyes never left hers, steady despite the blood seeping through his clothes. My life for hers, he said, voice level. Full surrender, all assets, all territory. She walks away clean. How touching. Enzo emerged from the shadows, perfectly pressed suit, a mockery of his betrayal. The great Salvatore Rinaldi, brought low by a maid. But Bianca wasn't just watching. She was acting. Her free hand had found the forklift's ignition during the standoff. The key was still in place, the machine humming to life almost silently. You want to see me brought low? Salvatore's words drew attention as Bianca eased the forklift into gear. I'll sign everything over. Just let her. Metal screamed as Bianca rammed the forklift into Enzo, pinning him against a pallet. In the same instant, Salvatore rolled, grabbed his weapon, and put a single bullet through Ignazio's head. The timer on the explosive rig hit 0 with an anticlimactic buzz. No explosion followed, just the hollow echo of a bluff revealed. Bianca's legs gave out as Salvatore reached her, his arms wrapped around her, solid despite his injury. She pressed her face into his neck, breathing in gunpowder and blood, and the underlying scent that was purely him. Sirens wailed in the distance, heralding other battles across the city. Salvatore's men secured the perimeter, while medics rushed in at 1:10 p.m. They tried to separate them to treat Salvatore's wound, but Bianca's fingers stayed locked around his blood-slick hand. No force on earth could make her let go. The charges were fake, one of the men reported, examining the rig. But the fear was real, Bianca whispered against Salvatore's shoulder. He tightened his grip in response, understanding what she wasn't saying, that the terror had been as effective as any real explosive. The medics worked around their joined hands, cleaning and bandaging Salvatore's gunshot wound. The bullet had gone through cleanly, missing anything vital. Still, Bianca counted his breaths, matching them to her own like he'd taught her through the camera. Sunlight slanted through high windows, catching dust motes and gun smoke. Outside, car doors slammed as more reinforcements arrived. The warehouse echoed with activity. Evidence being documented, bodies being removed, statements being taken. Through it all, Salvatore kept Bianca close, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist where the zip tie had left angry marks. When she shivered, he draped his suit jacket over her shoulders, heedless of the blood staining the expensive fabric. "I couldn't wear the ring," she said softly, "but I never stopped being yours." His free hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Around them, the world continued its chaos, medical equipment beeping, radios crackling, orders being shouted. But in their shared space, time seemed to slow, measured only in heartbeats and shared breaths. The scent of smoke lingered, mixed with sea air from the open door. Somewhere in the harbor, another foghorn sounded, the same sound that had led Salvatore to her. Bianca pressed closer, feeling his steady pulse beneath her fingers where they remained intertwined, unwilling to break contact even as the medics finished their work. 3 weeks of healing had changed them both. At 9 a.m., Bianca sat in the now familiar clinic room, sunlight warming the pale green walls as the physician reviewed her latest test results. Salvatore stood beside her, his presence steady despite the slight stiffness in his stance, a reminder of the wound that was still healing. "Your hormone levels have normalized completely," the doctor explained, turning her tablet to show them the graphs. "The harmful medication has cleared your system. While I can never guarantee pregnancy for any patient, there are no medical barriers preventing it now." Bianca's hands trembled in her lap. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but these weren't the desperate drops she'd shed 3 weeks ago. These were different, cleansing, freeing. "It's not about having a baby," she whispered, voice thick. "It's about knowing they didn't take that choice from me." Salvatore's jaw worked, emotion cracking through his usual control. He knelt beside her chair, one large hand spreading carefully over her lower belly. The touch was reverent, protective. "I will build you a home," he vowed, voice rough. "As meticulously as I built this empire, but this time under your rules, your boundaries, your vision." She covered his hand with hers, feeling the strength in his fingers, the way they trembled slightly against her stomach. The physician quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. "I don't need an empire," Bianca said. "I just need a place where other women can find what I found. Safety, choice, respect. Then that's what we'll build." By 3 p.m., they sat in the tower's executive conference room, signing documents that would reshape both their worlds. The foundation charter bore her mother's name in elegant script: Maria Elena Russo Memorial Foundation for Women's Safety and Advancement. Bianca's finger traced the name. "She saved you once," she said softly. "Now her name will help save others." Salvatore's pen moved steadily across the papers, authorizing funds, establishing oversight committees, laying groundwork for women's clinics and workplace safety initiatives. Each signature represented a piece of his power redirected toward protection rather than control. The domestic charter came next, thick with legal language but clear in its intent. Bianca's veto power over violent solutions that would affect their household. Mandatory de-escalation protocols before force could be considered. Complete financial transparency for the foundation's operations. "This puts limits on your authority," the lawyer pointed out carefully. "Good," Salvatore replied, signing without hesitation. Bianca watched him, seeing not the feared kingpin but the teenage boy her mother had helped escape. He'd built walls to survive, wrapped himself in violence like armor. Now he was choosing to let her reshape those walls into something that could shelter others. The afternoon light slanted golden through the windows as they finished the paperwork. Security teams would need retraining, business operations would need restructuring. But the foundation was set. Later that evening, Bianca stood in their bedroom, watching the city lights bloom in the gathering dusk. Her ring caught the lamplight, no longer feeling like a cage or even armor, just a choice she'd made and kept making. The shower ran in the master bathroom, a domestic sound that had become familiar over these weeks of healing. She'd slept in the guest room since the kidnapping, needing space to process the trauma. But tonight felt different. When Salvatore emerged, hair damp and wearing sleep pants, he paused at seeing her there. She held his gaze, steady and sure. "Stay?" she asked simply. He crossed to her slowly, giving her time to change her mind. His hand cupped her face with infinite care. "Always your choice," he reminded her. "I choose this. Choose you." By 11:30 p.m., the city had quieted beyond their windows. Bianca lay in their bed, Salvatore's chest warm against her back, his arm a welcome weight across her waist. She'd invited that touch, needed it to feel anchored. His breath was steady behind her, not quite asleep. Her ring caught moonlight filtering through the curtains. 3 weeks ago, she'd thrown herself into danger by trying to run. Now she understood. Safety wasn't about locks and walls. It was about having the power to choose, and choosing to stay. The sheets were cool and crisp against her skin, freshly changed that morning by her own hands. Such a simple thing, but it mattered. This was her space too, shaped by her choices. The gentle whir of the building systems formed a familiar lullaby. Salvatore's arm tightened slightly when she shifted, then deliberately relaxed. Even half asleep, he was conscious of her boundaries. She laced her fingers through his where they rested against her stomach. The city spread out below them, dotted with lights like earthbound stars. Somewhere out there, construction would soon begin on the first of their clinics. Safe houses would open their doors. Women would find paths to choose their own safety, their own strength. Bianca's eyes grew heavy, her body relaxing into the security of this moment. The past 3 weeks had been full of healing. Not just physical wounds, but deeper ones. Trust rebuilt through nightly check-ins, honest conversations in therapy, and quiet moments of choosing each other again and again. She felt Salvatore's lips brush her shoulder, featherlight and reverent. This was what safety felt like. Not the absence of danger, but the presence of choice. The power to set boundaries and have them respected. The freedom to be soft without being weak. Sleep crept closer as Bianca matched her breathing to Salvatore's steady rhythm. His arm stayed where she'd placed it, warm and grounding across her waist. Their shared warmth created a cocoon of peace in the darkness. The Rinaldi Tower's grand ballroom glowed with warmth as twilight painted the spring sky in shades of lavender. At 5:45 p.m., Bianca stood near the entrance, greeting donors in a deep green dress that wrapped her curves like a lover's embrace. The fabric caught the light as she moved, reflecting the same quiet strength she'd grown into over these months. Salvatore remained at her shoulder, a dark sentinel in perfectly tailored black. To the watching crowd, he was still the untouchable kingpin who could end lives with a phone call. But Bianca felt the gentle brush of his fingers against her lower back, saw the softness in his eyes when she glanced up at him, reverent touches that belonged to her alone. Earlier that afternoon, she'd found a small gift box on their kitchen counter. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, lay a pair of tiny knit booties in cream-colored wool. Not a promise, not pressure, but a whispered possibility. She'd traced the delicate stitches with her finger, and when Salvatore found her there, he'd simply wrapped his arms around her from behind, letting the moment be what it was, hope without demands. The foundation launch drew Pittsburgh's wealthiest philanthropists, all eager to associate with the Rinaldi name, though perhaps uncertain about its evolution. Bianca moved among them with grace, speaking passionately about women's healthcare access and workplace protection initiatives. Her voice carried the authority of someone who knew exactly why these services mattered. The foundation will focus on practical solutions, she explained to a cluster of potential donors. Medical care without judgment, job training with childcare support, legal aid for workplace harassment, the things that help women choose their own paths. Salvatore watched her work the room, pride evident in the slight curve of his lips. She'd transformed his empire's fearsome reputation into a force for protection, not just power. The foundation's first clinic would open next month, with 3 more locations already in development. A subtle shift in the security team's stance drew his attention. Through the service entrance, a courier had attempted to smuggle in a concealed weapon, likely hoping to make a name for himself by threatening the infamous Salvatore Rinaldi. In the past, such a threat would have ended in violence, a message written in blood. But now there were new rules, shaped by the woman who'd taught him that true strength lay in choosing restraint. Salvatore caught his security chief's eye and gave a slight nod. No soldiers descended, no blood was shed. Instead, the door closed quietly and the matter was handed to their legal team. The would-be attacker would face charges through proper channels. When he returned to Bianca's side, she read the resolution in his calm expression and squeezed his hand. Their rules held, even under pressure. This was the empire they were building together, one where protection didn't require destruction. The gala continued past midnight, winding down as donors departed with promises of support. In their private kitchen at 12:10 a.m., Bianca made midnight toast while Salvatore loosened his tie. The familiar domestic rhythm felt like a victory in itself. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, sliding a plate toward him. "When you first saw me cleaning that corridor, I imagined you safe," he admitted. Everything else came from watching you choose to be strong. Bianca's fingers found her wedding ring, no longer a symbol of possession but of partnership. I wasn't broken, she said softly, the words both declaration and release. Just lied to. Never broken. Salvatore's voice carried absolute conviction. They tried to cage your spirit with that lie, but you were always whole. She moved to stand between his legs where he sat, his hands settling naturally at her waist. The green dress whispered against her skin as she leaned into him. What if we never have children? She asked, glancing toward the kitchen counter where the tiny booties waited in their box. Then we'll fill our home with other kinds of love. He pressed his lips to her temple. I choose you, Bianca. Every day, in every way you'll have me. Children or no children. I choose you too, she whispered, meaning it as both promise and prayer. Even when it's hard, even when it scares me, I choose us. Their kitchen, warm with yellow light and the scent of butter, felt like its own kind of sanctuary. Outside, the city hummed with spring night sounds, traffic and distant sirens, the eternal urban lullaby. But here in this space they'd built together, their heartbeats found a synchronized rhythm that spoke of home. Salvatore's palm pressed against her lower back, steady and grounding. The touch held no demands, no expectations, just the quiet certainty of chosen love. Home, Bianca whispered, leaning deeper into his embrace. His answer rumbled through his chest where she rested against him. You're mine forever, because you choose me. The words settled over them like a benediction. Their love story had begun in blood and fear, shaped by lies and violence. But they'd forged it into something else, a partnership built on consent, protection, and the daily choice to be worthy of each other's trust. Their synchronized heartbeats kept time with the future stretching out before them, full of possibilities they would face together. Every breath was a choice renewed, every touch a promise kept, every moment another chance to prove that love could transform even the darkest spaces into shelter.